that work? It's work? You sure? Okay. All right, and you know that this morning it will be a message in relationship to our mothers, right? And I always have something according to the situations. And so this morning, my message is a positive outlook of a mother for her children. And this morning, as we meditate on this, we might think differently in regards to who this mother is, but I think there are some positives that we can learn from this mother. So turn your attention to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 20, verse 20 through 23. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 20, verse 20 through 23. Can somebody read it for me?
Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Grant that these two sons of mine may sit one on your right hand and other on the left in your kingdom." But Jesus answered and said, "You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They said to him, "We are able."
Madi. Thank you so much for reading. And Jeremiah, you're getting late, okay? You got to be quicker now. All right. So if you look at this particular passage, right, normally people hate this lady. But this morning, you look at it, arrogance, man. Look at what she's asking for. But I read somewhere in regards to Mother's Day, right? It's traditionally the day when children give something back to their mothers for all the spit they produce to wash dirty faces, all the old gum they held in their hands, all the noses they wiped, and all the bloody knees they made well with their kisses. This is the day mothers are rewarded for washing seats in the middle of the night, driving kids to school when they missed the bus, and enduring all those football and soccer games in the rain. It's a day of appreciation for making your children finish something they said they could not do, not believing them when they said, "I hate you," and sharing their good times and their bad. And this is so good that I said, you know what, I'm going to incorporate this. Because that last passage, it also goes to fathers too, that these kids say, "I hate you." I hate you is a word that they use in love, I believe, because they don't really mean it. Because if they really hate you, then they would be out of your life. But they don't. They want all those goodies, but I hate you because they did not want to follow that norm or that discipline that mother wanted to instill in their children. See, what are mothers? Again, there would be a lot of anecdotes today. It would be an interesting passage, so bear with me this morning because I wanted to make this interesting. So somebody wrote this. What are mothers? Well, mothers are teachers. Mothers are disciplinarians. Mothers are cleaning ladies. Some mothers are gardeners and mowers of lawns. Mothers are nurses. Mothers are doctors. Mothers are psychologists. Mothers are counselors. Mothers are chauffeurs. And mothers are coaches. Mothers are developers of personalities, molders of vocabularies, shapers of attitude. And mothers are soft voices saying, "I love you." And mothers are a link to God, a child's first impression of God's love. Mothers are all these things and much more. None of the fathers should get the credit for what mothers do. Mothers are the baby's first instructors. Mothers are the ones that train the children more than what the fathers do. അതുകൊണ്ട് മദേഴ്സ് എല്ലാം അങ്ങ് നിഗളിക്കരുത്. ഇന്ന് മദേഴ്സ് ഡേ ആയതുകൊണ്ട് നിങ്ങളെ സൂചിപ്പിക്കുക ഞാൻ. So you need to understand that is what a mother's job is. So I thought that, I was the favorite for Paula. Paula always says this. And she says, "No, I love my mother more." Yes, you do. Yes, you do. At least your action says that. And so the reason for that is the attachment that the children have with the mothers is much more precious than what with the fathers are. The fathers are the disciplinarians. I'm maybe not the disciplinarian as much for me. I mostly, I give a look. I have never, beaten them or said any of those things, but my look is enough for them to be terrified. But on the other side, even for our little kids, sometimes I say no, and so today Jaden was standing here, and I gave that look that don't jump, and he said, "Can I jump?" I said no, and he stood there. And so sometimes it is the look that matters. So famous humorist and columnist Irma Bombeck told of God in the act of creating mothers in one of her columns. She said that on the day God created mothers, he had already worked long overtime. An angel said to him, "Lord, are you sure you're spending a lot of time on this one?" The Lord turned and said, "Have you read the specs on this model? She is supposed to be completely washable, but not plastic. She is to have 180 moving parts, all of them replaceable. She is to have a kiss that will heal everything from a broken leg to a broken heart. She is to have a lap that will disappear whenever she stands up. She is to be able to function on black coffee and leftovers. And she is supposed to have 6 pair of hands." The angel asked, 6 pair of hands? That's impossible. The Lord said, "It's not the 6 pair of hands that bother me, it's the 3 pair of eyes. And she is supposed to have 1 pair that sees through closed doors, so that whenever she says, 'What are you kids doing in there?' she already knows what they are doing in there." And Claire can relate to that one. She has another pair in the back of her head to see all the things she is not supposed to see but must see. She has 1 pair right in front that can look at a child who goofed and communicate love and understanding without saying a word. "That's too much," said the angel. "You can't put that much in one model. Why don't you rest for a while and resume your creating tomorrow?" The Lord said, "No, I can't. I am close to creating someone very much like myself. I've already come up with a model who can heal herself when she's sick, who can feed a family of 6 with 1 pound of hamburger, and who can persuade a 9-year-old to take a shower." Then the angel looked at the model of motherhood a little more closely and said, "She's too soft." "Oh, but she's tough," said the Lord. "You'd be surprised at how much this mother can do." The angel asked, "Can she think?" No, the Lord said, "Not only can she think, but she can reason and compromise and persuade." Then the angel reached over and touched her cheek. The angel said, "This one has a leak. I told you that you couldn't put that much in one model." And the Lord said, "That's not a leak, that's a tear." And then the angel asked, "What's the tear for?" The Lord said, "Well, it's for joy, for sadness, for sorrow, for disappointment, for pride." The angel said, "You're a genius." And the Lord said, "Oh, but I didn't put it there." What a beautiful emulation of what a mother is. Irma Bombeck used to write quite a bit before she passed away, and she wrote these anecdotes on a daily column that she would come up with, and these were all about families that she would write. And you should read it once in a while, that if there is much online, that these are good stories that you can emulate. Now, what is it to the Word of God that I brought in, right? And you always say that ഇങ്ങനെ സ്റ്റോറീസ് പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരുന്ന കാര്യമുണ്ടോ? No, വചനമുണ്ട്. വചനത്തിൽ നിന്ന് ഞാൻ മാറത്തില്ല, and you know that. And I will bring the word this morning. This was all in the mind of the lady that I am going to bring, that is Mrs. Zebedee, right? Mrs. Zebedee was the parent of 2 children. What were they? What are their names? Children. Oh, Paula, looking at the Bible. The sons of thunder. What are their names? Thank you very much. Appreciate it, buddy. So these were people that were sons of thunder, that they call them, right? But there is only Mrs. Zebedee that is talked about. Why? Verse 20 through 23 says, "Mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down asked a favor of him. 'What is it you want?' He asked. She said, 'Grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom.' Jesus said to them, 'You don't know what you are asking. Can you drink the cup I'm going to drink?' They answered, 'We can.' Jesus said to them, 'You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father.'" So Mrs. Zebedee was aware of the teaching of Jesus, probably because James and John was one of his favorites, right? So he knew, or she knew, what Jesus' teaching was, and she was also very aware that her sons James and John were close to him, and because of the inner circle that Jesus had, right? He had an inner circle. Who were they? Peter, James, and John. These were the three inner circle. Then he had the outer circle of his other disciples, and then he had the large multitudes that he was ministering unto that in those times. So she was certain that when the Lord formed his kingdom, because these people were close to him, to Jesus, that these people will have responsibilities. She knew because, part of the inner circle, come on, man. Sometimes you need to understand that if you're part of the inner circle, you will become somebody in their books. And they would have positions of responsibility and authority. But she got spooked, I believe, because what happened in the first part of the scripture. Look at chapter 20, verse 1 through verse 16. And the story is, the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire men to work in his vineyard. He agrees to pay them a denarii for the day and send them into his vineyard. So, about the third hour, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace. And then he told them, you also go and work in my vineyard, and I'll pay you whatever is right. So they went. Then he went the 6th hour and the 9th hour and did the same thing. And also in the 11th hour, he went in and gets these people in. So what happens at the end? So he says, you also go and work in my vineyard. Verse 8, it says, when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first. And the workers who were hired about the 11th hour came and each received a denarii. And so these people started to grumble because the person who worked for 1 hour got the same income as the person who started in the first one. That was the first hour to the 12th hour. So they said that, you know what, this is not right. This is not right. But he answered, he says, I am not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarii? Take your pay and you go. This probably spooked this lady. And thinking that, you know what, these 2 of my kids are working with you, are, so close to you, are they going to get the same issue, or they run into the same issue that those workers ran into? This is again my imagination. But I think that is what spooked her. That is where she comes in, and she asked this question, probably, will my sons really have positions of authority in the Lord's kingdom? And she's thinking, when the opportunity comes for me to ask, she says, this is the best time for me to ask. It says, when you establish your kingdom, please let my sons sit on the right and the left. സൂക്കേടൊന്ന് നോക്കിക്കോണേ, സൂക്കേടൊന്ന് നോക്കിക്കോണേ, വേറെ എങ്ങും അല്ല, റൈറ്റിലും ലെഫ്റ്റിലും. ആ 24 മൂപ്പന്മാരുടെ കൂടെ ഇരിക്കാനല്ല, റൈറ്റിലും ലെഫ്റ്റിലും. This is sometimes some of us also think, right, that our children should be the best of the best, and they should be on the right and the left, and doing all things in church sometimes. ഈ ചർച്ചിലില്ലാത്തതിനായി ദൈവത്തിന് സ്തോത്രം. There are, ചർച്ചിൽ വഴക്കുണ്ടായി, ചർച്ച് സ്പ്ലിറ്റ് ആയിട്ടുണ്ട് അതിൻ്റെ പേരിൽ. But those are things that a mother would desire. So, we can criticize Mrs. Zebedee for being so bold. But because today is Mother's Day, I would bring in a positive look as to what Mrs. Zebedee probably might have thought about. So, there are 3 things that I want to bring. Number one, she wanted her sons to be part of her kingdom. The first and the foremost thing that a mother's job, as they raise their children, is to make them aware of the kingdom of God and to bring them in the nurture of the Word of God. Mrs. Zebedee was more aware of who Jesus was. She knew who Jesus was, and that is why she wanted her sons to be part of that kingdom first. Before even the position, she started with that I want them to be part of your kingdom when you come, so that they would be on the right and the left. Dear mothers, and I know the fathers are considered to be quote unquote the priests of the house. But in your raising your children up, more than any other education that you give, tell them about this living God. This morning, the word that came through from Rahul was, you shout and praise. We are excited to make our children to shout and praise and sing and do things in the church. It is good. We are excited that our children should be educated and get the best grades. That is very good. But more than anything else, make them to be kingdom people. Tell them about this Jesus. As Amama said, let our ladies be those that will make them to be aware of who Jesus is. യേശു കർത്താവ് ആരാണ് നമ്മുടെ കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങൾ അറിയേണ്ടത് ആദ്യത്തെ പഠനശാലയായ അമ്മയുടെ പഠനശാലയിലാണ്. Dear parents, it applies to both of you, but more than anything, because the children get attached, because you are the one that is attached to the child even in your womb. That, some people say, you do not cut the umbilical cord sometimes. You are always attached to it. അതും വരരുത്. അമ്മാമ്മ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ ദൈവത്തെക്കാട്ടിലും കൂടുതൽ കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ സ്നേഹിക്കരുത്. But on the other side, they are close to you. You bore them and you brought them up. The first and the foremost thing that the children should know is about the kingdom. You should emulate that by sitting in the presence of God in prayer. Let the children see you praying in the presence of God. Let the children see you reading the scriptures in the presence of God. Let the children see you doing things of God and emulating that as they grow up. Because they know that you love the Lord with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and that is for a purpose to glorify Him, and you want to have your children also emulate that same thing. So I know that many mothers pray. Sometimes they pray out of necessity, sometimes they pray because motherhood is not easy, but extremely difficult. I told you I will have so many examples this morning. So there is another one. James Dobson, as you know, Focus on the Family, talks about a time he came home when his son Ryan was a small baby. It had been a terrible day for his wife Shirley. Ryan had been sick and had cried all day. And as she was changing his diapers that day, the telephone rang, and Shirley reached over to answer it before fastening up his diaper. Just then, Ryan had another attack of diarrhea. She cleaned up that mess. Remember yesterday's diaper? She cleaned up that mess and put him in clean, sweet-smelling clothes. Then she took him into the living room and fed him. As she was burping him, he threw up all over herself and the couch too. So Dobson wrote, when I came home, I could smell the aroma of motherhood everywhere. Shirley cried out, this was not in my contract. Right? Sometimes mothers pray just out of frustration of it all. And sometimes in the frustration of trying to reach our children, we realize the difficulty of communication. This one was much more funnier. A dad gave his son Steve his very first responsibility. He told Steve to watch Susan, his baby sister, while he stepped out of the room. He had only been gone for a few moments when he heard a thump, and then Susan started crying. He rushed back to find that Susan had fallen from the couch and was stretched out on the floor. Meanwhile, Steve sat there looking so innocent. The father said, Steve, I told you to watch her. Steve answered, I did. He watched her fall and he watched her cry. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. See, being a parent is not easy, especially being a mother is not easy. Sometimes you're filled with joy and sometimes with sadness. Sometimes your children make you so proud you want to pop your buttons. The other times you can't find enough handkerchiefs to dry your tears. See, there was a mother of three who was asked if you had to do it all over again, would you still want children? Yes, she said, but not the same ones. Being a parent is not easy, especially being a mother is not easy. It is difficult. But Mrs. Zebedee gives us a valuable example because she wanted her sons to be part of the kingdom. I know it's not going to be easy, and especially in their teenage years, it is not easy. As Sister Betty dealing with Joshua. No, I'm just kidding, man. Joshua, don't be upset at me, okay? I still love you. But it was a good because your face was just stoic, so it was a good place for me to point at you. But to be a teenager, it's not easy. But mothers, have patience. Lead them to Christ. Make sure that Christ is visible in them. When you make people or his children to be kingdom minded, they will turn out to give you less trouble. To make sure that you are focused on him first before you are focused on anything else. When the children see that and you raise your children as kingdom minded, you will have good things that is waiting for you. Eternity is what matters. So the first thing that Mrs. Zebedee's outlook for her children was she wanted her sons to be part of his kingdom. Number two, she wanted her sons to be actively involved in the work of his kingdom. So not only did Mrs. Zebedee ask for her children to be a part of his kingdom, but she wanted them to be actively involved. Otherwise, she would not say, make them to sit on the right and the left. Because if it was with Jesus, he would not make them to sit, right? He would ask them to go in and do the business of him, to go into the villages, or to feed the poor, or to do things that was of the kingdom, or to cast out demons. Right? The part of the kingdom also is to emulate and show, to be actively involved in the work of his kingdom. So where does the spirit of service begin? It begins at home with parents setting the example and praying that their sons and daughters might be involved in the work of the kingdom. More than doing things for, I am again all for being the best of the best in your education, but be the best of the best in terms of the kingdom. Dear parents, emulate, show them that, എന്താ പിള്ളേർ ചർച്ച വരാത്തത് പലപ്പോഴും എന്താ വരാത്തത് നമ്മൾ വരാത്തതുകൊണ്ട് ഫോഴ്സ് ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ because they are not interested. Why? Because we don't show interest either. Make sure that mothers, the children would be involved in the things of the world, of the church. The mothers who are good at doing stuff within the church, we say let others do. No, let us emulate. Our children will do service in the kingdom of God. It is not just enough to be saved. Churches are filled with people content just to fill a pew on Sunday mornings. There are plenty of people willing to sit back and receive the blessings, but seldom do they get involved in doing any of the real work of the church. I have told you of the 80-20 principle. Remember? What is it called? It's the Pareto Principle. What is it? 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. 80% of the money is brought in by 20% of the people. 80% of all that is happening in and around the world, even in workplaces, is done by 20% of people. All the other 80% is sometimes sitting back and enjoying the blessings. Let not that happen in our churches, in our place of worship, in our homes. Educate them that they would be people that work for his kingdom. And to the kids, let me tell you, to the young ones who are children, let me tell you, you are called not to be lazy, but to be part of the kingdom to the full of your ability for the cause of the kingdom. It is easy to come home, clap your hands, and go back, but find out the niche that you could be getting involved in, that you could be blessing for others. You are called to serve others. So the number one thing is she wanted her sons to be part of his kingdom. The second one was She wanted her sons to be actively involved in the work of his kingdom. And the third and the last one, ഒരു ആപ്പ ഉപ്പ അമ്മയൊന്നുമല്ലായിരുന്നു. She had big expectations. She had big expectations. You know, what do you think of your children? The energy that you give into them, the appreciation that you give into them, and the confidence that you give in them is the confidence that they grow up with. You know, ചില അമ്മമാർ പറയും അവന് ഒരു കാശിനും കൊള്ളത്തില്ല, അവൻ കാശിന് കൊള്ളത്തില്ലെങ്കിൽ അവൻ ജീവിതത്തിൽ കാശിന് കൊള്ളത്തില്ല. But even in the weakness, you find that niche that will encourage them. They might be feeble in certain areas. You know, എല്ലാവരും പഠിച്ച IAS officer ആകാൻ ഒക്കത്തില്ല. Not everyone can be an IAS officer. Not everyone can be, you know, Bill Gates, who did not even, you know, graduate from college and he went in and became Bill Gates, even though he now has doctorate or whatever, right? Now you cannot be a Zuckerberg who, you know, ditched college to go in and start Facebook. You can't. But there is always potential in your kids, and the expectations that you set in your children are the expectations that they grow up with. When they have no confidence, boost them with the confidence that they can, so that they would become much more than we can ever be. We were just talking about, you know, in terms of all the other things, when you compare apples to apples, everybody compares with Sarah. No, nobody else can become Sarah. Sarah is Sarah. I think that Mary is the genius in our home. Sometimes she doesn't apply it. That's a whole different story. But she is. But on the other side, she is good at what she does in the sphere of her influence. If you don't give that confidence in her, she will go down. It's the same way in a lot of people. And so she is good at what she does. She's appreciated in what she does. They have a massive layoff. Her job is safe. And I'm grateful to God that she probably is the lowest on the totem pole, but still she's good at what she does, and they want to continue with her. My thing is this: when you give confidence to your children, especially mothers, your confidence to your children is very important. It's very important. Never say that you will not be a person that cannot achieve. Make sure that your children are always, and that is the reason why sometimes you see me hugging my children, all my children in church, and encouraging them and saying them, you are good, you are good, you are better, you can be better, but you are good in what you do. Because when that encouragement is for a small talk, sometimes that encouragement is not at home. നീ ഒരു കാലത്തും ഗുണം പിടിക്കത്തില്ലെന്ന് ഒരിക്കലും ഒരു മാതാവും പിതാവും പറയും. നമ്മളെപ്പോഴും പറയേണ്ടത്, കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ, നിങ്ങൾ ദൈവത്താൽ അനുഗ്രഹിക്കപ്പെട്ടവർ, ദൈവത്തിന് വേണ്ടി ചിലത് ചെയ്യുവാനുണ്ട്. She didn't ask for her children to be doorkeepers. She wanted them to be the right and the left of Jesus. You know, in some ways we can think that she was arrogant. She's aggressive. But I really admire her boldness. I really do. Too often people have settled for mediocrity in church. For too long, some have been content with just making it, barely making it through the door. Right? നമ്മൾ പറയത്തില്ലേ, എങ്ങനെയാ, എന്തോ പറയുന്നത്, ദൈവസന്നിധിയിൽ വല്ല വിധേനെ അങ്ങ് പോയാൽ മതി. വല്ല വിധേനെ ആരും പോണ്ട. വല്ല വിധേനെ ആരും പോണ്ട. പൂർണ്ണ ഹൃദയത്തോട്, പൂർണ്ണ സമാധാനത്തോടും പൂർണ്ണ ആരോഗ്യത്തോടും അവനെ ആരാധിച്ച് അവന് വേണ്ടി ചിലതൊക്കെ ചെയ്തേച്ച് മാത്രം പോയാൽ മതി. Do what is asked of you, but make sure when you are discouraged, the parents, the mothers especially, to the children, make sure that you encourage them. Fathers, do encourage them. ഇത് ഫാദേഴ്സിനും കൂടെ ഉള്ള ഒരു ഇതാണ്. It is time to strive for excellence. See, I read the story where Jesus says, or God says to his angel, he says that what? When I'm creating a mother, I'm close to creating something very much like myself. See, that is why all of you mothers are special. Because you are created in the image of God with the love and the kindness and the goodness and the encouragement that you get. And I will end with this last story. And this was a story that I heard and I cried also. The story is told of World War II and the Holocaust that took to the lives of millions. And the story is of Solomon Rosenberg and his family, a Jew. Solomon Rosenberg and his wife and their two sons and his mother and father were arrested and placed in a Nazi concentration camp. It was a labor camp and the rules were simple. As long as you can do your work, you are permitted to live. When you become too weak to do your work, then you are exterminated. Rosenberg watched his mother and father marched off to their deaths, and he knew that next would be his youngest son David, because David had always been a frail child. Every evening, Rosenberg came back into the barracks after his hours of labor and searched for the face of his family. When he found them, they would huddle together, embrace one another, and thank God for another day of life. One day, Rosenberg came back and didn't see those familiar faces. He finally found his oldest son, Joshua, in a corner, huddled, weeping and praying. He said, "Josh, tell me it's not true." Joshua turned and said, "It is true, Papa. Today David was not strong enough to do his work, so they came for him." Mr. Rosenberg asked, "But where is your mother?" "Oh, Papa," he said, "when they came for David, he was afraid and he cried. Mama said, 'There is nothing to be afraid of, David,' and she took his hand and went with him." That is a true mother. In the time when there is danger, the mother protects her children. When at the cusp of defeat, a mother can boost a child's heart and a confidence and bring them back on stronger ground. Dear mothers, you are invaluable for all of us. And to all your children, not just by cards and by some flowers, which I hope all you men have given to your wives. It is not just in that, but in a heart of hearts, when you appreciate your mother by living a life pleasing unto God and honoring your parents, you set the model of what a true child should be. Mother's job is to boost you to be part of the kingdom. Mother's job is to make you to be actively part of the kingdom. Mother's job is to have bigger expectations of you. But children, you have a part as well. Honor them in all you do. They will be with you till their time comes. They will never want to leave you. And even when your child is married, you always want them to be with you. Ask a father. It is always true. But more than anything, as parents, as mothers, we want our children to be the best of the best for the cause of the kingdom, living a godly life. May all of you mothers be as powerful as Mrs. Zebedee and become people that will create kingdom people that will boast them for the cause of the kingdom and would also have big expectations that we would do greater things together for the cause of the kingdom. Remember, Christ's coming is nigh. We do not know when his time is that he will come, but we know the signs are saying that his coming is nigh.